examining your relationship to bureaucracy is a really interesting one. I've made my peace with it. But I like it. I find comfort in it. Means to an end. Means to an end. Beautiful. So I set you a mild challenge about could you maintain some kind of connection to the ATM while you're in the break. Was that possible? Impossible. Was our brief canter into bureaucracy, did that sort of sever the ties to the ATM? Yeah. Sorry. So, you know, these things, we are compartmental in many respects. It's the way we deal with the world. And this idea of integration is when things can be more pervasive and there is more connectivity between the compartments in a purposeful way, not in a kind of bleeding way. So if you had disconnected from the ATM, how do you go about reconnecting? You bring to mind some memory of the ATM and where we finished, which was you know, you've been doing variations of head circles, and then we did that very unusual position of lying on your front, leaning on one elbow, and having the other shoulder suspended in midair, and what that difficulty offered you by way of an opportunity to adapt in some way. So to help you reconnect, quietly come up to sitting with the soles of your feet together, lean on your hands. Oh no, actually the last thing we did was hold onto your ankles, wasn't it? Okay, so let's start from there so that you can make that connection even stronger. So do some brief exploration simply to refresh that learning. So it's a refresher. Holding onto your ankles gently and reminding yourself of the similarities and the differences. So what we'll talk about in terms what our brains love to do are two somewhat paradoxical things. They love to detect a pattern because they go, yeah, I know this pattern. It's like, I know this piece of music, I recognize it. And there is something delicious in that recognition of a pattern, of finding a pattern, this pattern recognition stuff. Conversely, what the brain loves to do is to spot a difference. So with 100 faces in the crowd, spotting the face that's got a different coloured skin, spotting the face with the, you know, red hair, something like that. So these two different things is novelty detection and this pattern recognition. So when you do this, when you do a variation, you have two of these things going on. Pattern recognition, what's the same? And novelty detection, what is different about having my arms in front? And now put your arms behind again so that you can go through that. Remind yourself of the original pattern, if you like, which is going to keep changing anyway. None of you are, you're all extremely plastic, changeable. And when you're satisfied with some experience of recognition and difference, lie on your back. Or if you're not satisfied, just fake it. Lie on your back anyway. I realise that might be an some of you have fairly high expectations around satisfaction. So that's the reconnection part, revisiting, refreshing, revising. So we're back into the lesson. Bend your knees so that both feet are standing flat on the floor. And begin with this idea that your intention is to monitor the shape of your spine and its contact with the floor. So you can be you can get into the sort of the outcome of it, which is going to be lifting your head. However, you are only lifting your head in order to understand your spine better and what it does to allow your head to lift. Is that really so? This is important. Otherwise, you'll effort and get caught up in the head lift. So go ahead. Gently, quietly lift your head a few times. That's it. Just lift your head. There's no intention. I'm not saying look anywhere, but you're doing it in order to understand your spine better. What happens to your spine? How does it change shape in order for your head to lift? So where do you lift your head from? So it's a movement of your head in which parts of your spine? So you might feel something pushing back, so parts of your spine pushing back into the floor. You might feel some parts of your spine obviously lifting away from the floor. And it's a tiring movement, so just doing it a few. Now interlace your fingers and put them behind your head. And by bringing your elbows forward, lift your head with this idea of noticing the spine, the influence of the spine. So your head is now a passenger. And what's the difference? Is there a difference? So you can think about the shape of the spine, the length of the spine, the changing contact with the floor, the changing distance from the floor. And pick a few things that you notice. So for most people, lifting the head this way is easier, right? So that's kind of an expectation. It might not be true, but it's a reasonable expectation. So noticing what's working and what's not working, what's happening in the belly, what's happening in the small of the back, the pelvis, the chest, the sternum. And now go back to just lifting the head without the arms. And can you reproduce some of those different feelings from lifting the head with the arms? Can you kind of manufacture them when the arms aren't involved? So how do you learn from something that is easier and consciously place it into a condition where it's inherently harder? This kind of self-learning where you know something makes it easier, or your experiences. So you're learning from yourself. So the same parts of the back are pressing or not pressing, so that you're making the same shape with your back. You're feeling the same areas of work when you lift your head without the hands as you did when you lifted your head with the hands. And if you need to cycle between those two to clarify, go ahead. That's fine. But this internal transfer of learning, this self-education, this self-experimentation, it means you can be infinitely more interested in yourself. Because you're not relying on an expert. You are finding a condition that's easier with a condition that's not as easy and learning. Now let's try another variation, is slide your hands underneath the small of your back. So have your right hand on top of your left hand, resting underneath the small of your back. And now lift your head. So this will interfere with the ability. So again, for most people, this makes it harder to lift your head. How do you use making something harder to be more informative? So it's now stopping you from rounding the lower part of the back. Or maybe you still can round the back. So actually, for some people, it might make it easier because now you know you've got the small of your back. And when you have satisfied yourself about that, take your hands away. And again, notice that by making something more difficult and then taking the difficulty away, that might, doesn't have to, help be more informative about this self-learning. Now that your lower back is free to change shape again. So there, we've given you two classic kind of Feldenkrais principles, making something easier, making something harder, in order for you to inform this other way, this in this case, lifting the head. Resting when you need to. Good. Come back if you have your legs long, bring them back up to standing. And this time, lengthen your right leg. So your left leg stays standing and your right leg is long. And go ahead now and lift your head. So in some ways, this will make it, for some people, this will make it a little bit more difficult again. So it might feel easier on one side than the other. Maybe put your hands on your either side of your belly so that you can feel, you can lower belly, middle belly, upper belly, base of the ribs even, and feel how having the leg long can make it a little bit more challenging to engage the belly on the one side. Maybe not. It's not a universal truth that this is more difficult. It just might be more difficult. You can go back to both legs up if you're curious about, well, what is the sort of the purpose of, having the knees up. Does it actually make a difference for you or not? Maybe rest in a different position. Rest if you need to get off your back. Come back onto your back again and have your right leg long and your left leg standing. And remember from ages ago, maybe it wasn't such a long time ago. So have your hands on your belly again. So maybe just each side of your belly button for now. And do a little kind of the seesaw breathing movement of lifting up your sternum. So your chest kind of lifts and then you let it go down. So you're not working at the moment on the pushing the belly out part of the seesaw breathing, but the raising the sternum going more towards the ceiling. Your chest is getting bigger and then coming back to normal size. And what do you do with your belly in order for your chest to get bigger? What do you feel under your hands? Can you feel your sternum moving? Is it hard to do that without doing the opposite movement, which is push your belly out? It is coming later. I'll give you the heads up. But for now, it is that pushing the chest out, which means the belly sucks in, and then things coming back to status quo. And what's it like with your legs asymmetrical? Can you actually expand your chest symmetrically with your bottom half, as it were, asymmetrical? How do you judge that? You can move your hands if you like to feel if your chest can expand symmetrically. Does your sternum move straight up? And then go ahead and explore if you make your legs symmetrical, so both legs are up. So again, be Sherlock Holmes about this and check out the possibilities. So with your legs symmetrical, is it easier to have your chest expand symmetrically and then go asymmetrical again? Raising and lowering your sternum, expanding your chest. And then you can try with the left leg long and the right leg up. So this is transferring any learning that might have happened about adapting to your belly being longer on the left and shorter on the right, and its influence on your ability to expand the chest or not. And how do you stay in this mode of exploration and questioning without going into the, am I doing it right? What does she want me to do? You know, what's expected? I'm not getting it. God, I'm really dumb. Oh, geez, I hate flexion lessons. That would be where I would go. Geez, I hate flexion lessons. That's my attitude. Can you soften the attitude? Okay, that's it. Now bring the soles of your feet together and have the knees out to either side. You're still on your back. And now have your hands just above your pubic bone. So they're still on your belly, but below the belly button, between the belly button and the pubic bone. And now do that pushing out movement. So before I constrained you to only do half of the seesaw. Now you've done the C part of the seesaw. Now you're doing the saw part of the seesaw. Push your belly out and then pull it back in. And I've deliberately asked you to put your hands below so that the pushing out of the belly is lower down. So for most of us, it's easy to push the belly out above the belly button. And how do you access that lower part of the belly? So if you want to feel both parts, that's fine. And if you have trouble feeling any movement above the pubic bone, cough. I'll cough for you. And it will, almost everybody, the lower belly will activate with a cough. And then use that sensation, that sort of automatic pushing out of the lower belly to access it voluntarily. Even if it's just a tiny little butterfly of a movement down there. I remember after I had a baby, that my lower belly was dead for yonks. I probably told you the story. You'll meet Jeff in October, but I remember him doing an advanced training and we were doing a lot of work with the lower belly. And he basically said, my God, it's so dead down there. And I basically told him, well, if he'd just shut a vacuum cleaner, maybe his belly would be a bit dead as well. I didn't actually say shut a vacuum cleaner, but that's what one of my male friends said once. Is giving birth like pooing a vacuum cleaner? You know, like a barrel vacuum cleaner, not an upright. I said, yeah, probably. So, you know, bellies have had a lot to put up with over the years. So don't give yourself a hard time if it's a little bit vague. Okay. And now go ahead and do the seesaw breathing, the full C and the full saw. So the belly sucking in and the chest coming forward and the belly pushing out and the chest sinking. So the alternate, expanding the belly and then expanding the chest, expanding the belly and expanding the chest. Good. Leave it and rest with your legs long. So you know, as a sort of budding ATM teacher, you can be asking yourself, what's this sudden change of direction in this lesson? Like why is she busy fussing around the sternum and the belly wall for the head circles? And we can talk about that afterwards. And when you watch each other, you know, after the lunch break, you will observe the importance of the belly wall being able to go short and long, and the chest being able to go short and long, in order to allow the head to move in a way that, in the way that we're interested in. So have your soles of your feet together and propped on your elbows. So you're on your back, but the soles of your feet together, and you're propping on your elbows. And how is that today? How's the propping on the elbows compared to yesterday? Did we do it yesterday or the day before? Can't remember. Yesterday. Okay. So your head's in the air. And now bring your head a little bit forward, a little bit back. So this is still lifting your head, still taking your head towards your chest and then back again. So what's it like in this position? So we've slightly changed the orientation, still lifting your head, still the same movement. But it's qualitatively different. Actually, it's probably quantitatively different as well to when you were lying flat on your back. And notice what's happening in your chest bone and in your belly as your head goes back, and your chest bone and your belly as your head comes forward. And therefore, what's happening that's on the front of you, what's happening in the back of you in terms of the shape of your spine. Remember yesterday, or whenever it was, I talked about this sort of C curve going forwards and then a C curve going backwards. Is that clearer today? Less clear? Between your shoulder blades, small of your back. And is there a place where it might make sense to push your belly out and then be able to fold your belly in? And so do it both ways. So fold your belly in as your head comes forward and push your belly out as your head goes backwards. And then do the opposite. Push your belly out as your head comes forward and suck your belly in as your head goes backwards. What the? And of course you can do it. But it's weird. So it's, sort of doing again, making something difficult, maybe actually even incongruent, so that the congruent becomes possibly more obvious, possibly. Good, and rest on your back for a moment. So bring the soles of your feet together and rest on your elbows. So you're on your back, but on your elbows, soles of your feet together. And allow your chin to come more towards your chest. And now imagine that the top of your head feels quite heavy and you just want to loll your head a little bit to the right. So as if that's it. So almost be like a little arc of movement, and then come back to the middle. And just keep doing that little lolling round to the right, as if your ear's going to go a little bit more in the direction of your shoulder. And then next time you come back to the middle, imagine that your head is a little bit heavy and it's just going to loll a little bit to the left. And it's going to come around and then loll a bit to the right. So it's sort of swinging around from the front. That's it. So your face is always pretty much oriented to the front, but you're kind of rolling a little bit around there. That's it. And where do you feel that movement happening? So there'll be something that's really grabbing your attention, like that, you know, maybe for some people a bit of a strain in the front of the neck. For some people not. Depends on how much your chest sinks, as we looked at yesterday. Anything happening in the back of the chest, between the shoulder blades? Can you breathe? Who cares? I care. I care. Breathe. That's it. Is your chest free to move? That's it. Good. Rest for a little moment. On your back, lengthen your legs. Now, it's not the same movement, but roll your head in this position. A little tiny bit. So be aware that it's not the same movement as the head roll when you're propped on your elbows. However, it's an informative movement. And some of you often do it now in rest breaks. And again, I'll just go a little bit meta here for why you might ask someone to do this in an ATM, is because when you've been working the front muscles a lot, like getting this activity and this liveliness in the abdominals in particular, and in the little flex, you know, the front muscles between the ribs, people can really can work very hard in the front muscles of the neck to compensate for you know, less activity lower down, let's say. So by rolling the head, you're just alleviating any overwork or tension in those front muscles of the neck. So that's one of the reasons that we do it. So you particularly notice it if we've had a lot of flexor activating stuff. However, in this instance, it's also an interesting movement to make because it's a movement of the head, predominantly in the neck joints. And in my notes here, the teacher is saying, taking the opportunity to notice how far down the spine rolling of the head in this position goes. So it's harder to sense because the spine is relatively sort of heavy on the floor, whereas when you're on your elbows, the spine is freed from the floor. So you can get, it's easier to get a sense of the spine, the whole spine supporting the turning of the head. Okay, so that's a little bit of, that's an aside. And in actual fact, the instructions here now say roll the head a little bit faster and faster. Can you make it small and light and really fast, but grow the speed of it very slowly? So you might want to try that. And again, why would that be? Why would we use a change in speed? you tell, well, you don't have to tell me, but you can think through, what does it do for you? Could be stuff all, or again, it could be a way of alleviating tension, little light, quick movements. Plip, 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 plip kind of movements, that's it. And as you keep making those little movements, open your eyes, but keep your eyes fixed on a point in the ceiling. And this might be a little way of, if some people are a bit dizzy with the head moving, for some people, fixating their gaze will actually help the dizziness. Some people will actually, it's actually a test for dizziness, but we won't go there. Good, rest for a moment. Leave all of that. Simply rest. So Linda, in response to your question about the purpose of rest, you can tell that this rest is a rest where you just rest. There's nothing to notice. I don't want you to do anything. I want you to just like that. Because what I've asked you to do has been quite technical. And you need respite. So prop yourself on your elbows and have the soles of your feet together. And begin this little movement of looking to the right. And now allow this movement to have another intention. Even if you can't sense it, well, some of you are actually doing it. Your pelvis is rolling a little bit to the right as well. Whether you are or aren't doing it, start that movement as well, so that your eyes turn to the right and your head turns with it, and it's like your eyes and your head and your pelvis are connected. Who knew? And so the outside of your right knee goes more to the floor. So it's just to the right and then back to the middle. And you look to the right and your pelvis and your head and your knees turn to the right, and you come back to the middle. And the next time you come back to the middle, look a little bit to the left and allow your left knee to come closer to the floor, and then back to the middle. And then when you come, and then going all the way to the right, back via the middle to the left. When I say all the way, you don't have to go, what is all the way? Just as much as feels. Where you can really feel that there's a connection between turning your head, looking to the right, and your pelvis turning. So your eyes and your pelvis have this sense of working together. So in a way, you can't even tell that they are, one's initiating and the other's following. They're doing it together. Looking and rolling. And then increase the speed. Faster, lighter. That's it. Ding, 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 ding. It looks like, when you go into a clock shop and there's lots of pendulum. What's the plural of pendulum? Pendula. Pendulocks. Lots of pendulocks going ding, ding. And it starts to make you feel a bit weird after a while. Everything going ding, 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 ding. That's it. Good. Okay, rest for a moment. Roll up to sitting and have the soles of your feet together and your hands behind you. And go ahead and make a circle with your head. And has any of these little funny things that we've done in terms of the belly and the pelvis and the sternum had any influence on the circling of the head and the ability to breathe? And how do you come back to a movement with kind of fresh eyes? Do you just go straight back into the groove of how you did it before? Or do you do it in a way that's kind of open-ended? Like, well, what is the influence? Can I go so slowly that I am attentive to the possibility that it might have changed? Or do I just go back into a habit? Have I already developed a habit of how I roll my head? How do you stay alive to that possibility for constant self-improvement as opposed to this desire to go back to what is known? And now open your eyes and fix your eyes on somewhere in the room in front of you and continue to roll your head. Hard, easy, whatever. It's different. It's not. You don't even have to put a judgment on it. You just go, okay, well, this is another set of conditions. How do I adapt? The eyes on one point, but the rest of you can move around your eyes. Which is what we do all the time. It's actually what the vestibular system is for in many ways. Can you breathe? Is your spine still free? Is your pelvis still free? Leave that. Well, let your eyes free range so they can do what they like. They can close, they can go with the head, they can lead, they can do whatever they like. But notice what they do. Do a few circles, just a few. Out of sheer curiosity, not because I told you to. So different to Monday. And now for a few times, again, out of sheer curiosity, hold your ankles and do the movement, do the head circles. And be so excited, like Lockie. I want to share what's happening when I hold my ankles now, when I turn my head. Oh, fantastic. It's exactly the same. Ah, fantastic. It's completely different. Oh, fantastic. I've got no idea. That's great. So much more to learn. Can you change the circle? Change the direction of the circle? Of course you can change the circle. Change the direction. Can you go whee as you go round? No, clearly answers no. when silence means no. All right, good. And rest on your back. And is it a lovely rest? How would you make it a lovely rest? What would constitute lovely? Somebody snored for those who aren't in the vicinity. And what's the influence of all of those funny little things on you? What's the influence on the floor? Is the floor meeting you in a different way? Telling you something different about your spine? About its length? About its shape? About its clarity? So we'll come back to the 7 cervical, the 12 thoracic, and the 5 lumbar vertebrae. We'll stick with those for now. Are those numbers any more meaningful? Or actually less meaningful because you're sensing the spine as a whole? It could go either way, couldn't it? They could be becoming more individual, or they could be becoming more integrated. They're both possible. And now very slowly, so that you can actually maintain this attentional connection with your spine, roll over. And extend it into sitting. And you've still got this attentional connection, this connection. So your attention is still residing with this experience of spineness. So you're not spineless people, you are full of spine, spiny anteaters, the spinicity. And that you can monitor the length and the shape of the spine at any given time. So if I asked you to stop, and I'm not going to because it's lunchtime, but at any given time you are with your spine as you're going from sitting now up into standing. So without the benefit of the floor as your feedback guide, how do you monitor, track, stay with your spine and in standing? If you kind of lost parts of it in standing, reconnect with the neck and the chest and the lower back in particular, but maybe the sacrum and the coccyx. We do leave them out a fair bit. Are they all with you? Do they all come up off the floor with you? And in terms of length and shape? And now very slowly, as you go to make a step and then pause, the first thing that you do to take a step, what happens in your spine? And therefore everything else, because it's connected. What happens in your neck, in the thoracic spine, and the lumbar. Then go ahead and take the step. and can keep going like that. That you are attending to your spine and stopping when you need to reconnect if you lose it, and then that's it. So the movements are a lot more subtle when you're walking. And that this level of awareness is not functional, is it? You know, you'd miss the train. Just putting it out there that you would miss the train, even if it was running. So then, how do you lighten the attention so that you have a little bit of attention as you realise, oh, I do have to get to the train. However, I'm quite interested in the changing shape of my spine as I go a little faster. So that shift in attention that allows you to be functional. But at any moment you could tap into parts of your spine. Spineless. Spinefulness. Fullness of the spine. You're full of your spine. And it's so funny. Yesterday when I was coming back from the supermarket, there was a guy, and I don't know whether he had a pathology, because I'm a clinician, I do pathologize, I'm sorry to say, but he was walking like this. He literally was doing that, and there is a cultural aspect to that kind of walking. And I was thinking, is that a cultural thing? But then someone of his culture also stared at him as much as I was staring at him, so I thought perhaps not. But that guy has a very strong idea about what spineness is, because it really didn't move within itself. You know, it wasn't an individuated thing. He was moving around his spine. It was really fascinating. So you could move like that or not. It was very quick. Was it efficient? Possibly not. But you could, we all have elements of freezing our spine like that. His was just extreme. Okay, lunchtime. It's 1:45. Sorry, but it went a bit longer. Oh my Lord! It's 1:45. Look at that clock. It's a weird clock. Okay, so it's 1:45. So we'll come back at 2:00. 2:00. Because Jenny and I will be giving lessons. Right. Hello. Now, do you need to have something in your stomach first? I'll just have 5 minutes.